Alright, today I'm going to be going over how the fuel system in an airplane works. Right now I'm sitting inside of a 1989 Cessna 180 float plane. It's got a carbureted engine, gravity fed fuel system, so it'll be pretty simple to go over. So we're going to go over how the system gets the fuel from the tanks to the engine to keep you flying. So the fuel system in this airplane is really simple. The fuel starts in the wings, in the tanks. This specific plane has a long-range fuel kit on it, so it holds 79 gallons of usable fuel. Airplanes have two fuel tanks, one in each wing. This one has two different compartments in each wing, so it's got two filler caps on top of the wing, which I'll show you right now. Has two vented filler caps. And then in this plane, each wing also has a vent for each tank. That's the vent for each tank. There's one on the other side too. The vent on the bottom of the tank actually pressurizes the tank. When you're flying, the air goes into it and pressurizes the tank. The two vented fuel caps actually release pressure. So right now the plane's sitting in the sun, vapors are expanding, and they have somewhere to go so they don't build up inside of the tank. So as I said, this plane is gravity fed fuel system. So the fuel goes from the tanks, gravity forces it down to the selector switch that I'm about to show you right now. The fuel selector is right here. You got both tanks, left tank, right tank. You also got off for both, but most people always leave it on both tanks because then you can tell on your fuel gauges over here if you have it on both tanks and all of a sudden your left tank is empty and your right tank is half. You know your right tank, there's a clog or something in the fuel system and it's only been pulling from your left tank. Some people will run left for 30 minutes, right for 30 minutes. That way they kind of have a number in their head, you know, it burns a certain amount per hour, so every 30 minutes it burns a certain amount of fuel, and they know how much fuel they have left in each tank. After the fuel selector switch, the fuel is directed to the strainer, which is at the bottom of the engine, and I'll show you how to operate that. So to get to the strainer, fuel strainer. Pull that and watch. So basically the strainer is used, if any water is in the system, it goes to the bottom of that strainer because water is heavier than fuel, or any kind of junk also heavier than fuel. It'll all go to the bottom. When you pull that lever, it lets it out of the bottom of the strainer, and then you have clean fuel. So I'm not going to take the cowling off of this plane to show you the strainer because it's a lot of work, but we've got the exact same plane in the hangar that's already got the cowling off that we're doing some work on, so I'll show you the strainer on there. Now this is actually the fuel strainer right here. That's where the fuel comes out of. This is the actual fuel hose, so that's it. Now this specific plane does have a primer. Not all planes do have a primer. This one does, so I'll show it to you. So this is the primer right here. You just pull it out and push it in. I'm not going to do it, but that's it. Doesn't really get a lot of use out here in Louisiana because it's pretty hot. It's more of a thing you use in the winter. So after the strainer, ignoring the primer, the fuel goes directly to the carburetor. The carburetor controls how much fuel is distributed to the cylinders. We've got that other plane apart, so I'll show you the carburetor on that. Now, this is the carburetor right there. You can see the fuel line goes up into the carb. The air goes through here into the carb, and and it's mixed in here and sent to the engine. So that's it. That's the carb. So I'll give you the gist of how a carburetor works. The fuel goes into the carburetor into a fuel bowl. The air goes through the air intake, through the throat of the carburetor, also called the venturi. It's shaped like a venturi. When the air goes through, it creates a spot of low pressure, which sucks the fuel through a mixture needle or jet into the throat. It mixes with the air at a certain ratio that you establish using the mixture control. So then once the atomized fuel is mixed with the air, it is then put into the intake manifold, which is controlled by the throttle. So when you open the throttle, it allows all that fuel and air to rush into the intake manifold and go to the cylinders. So when you have a closed throttle, it stops that air and fuel mixture from going to the engine. So if you do half throttle, it only allows half of that air fuel mixture. So basically the throttle controls how much of that mixture is going in, and the mixture control actually mixes the certain ratio of air and fuel. So these are the controls for the carburetor. This right here is the throttle. Can't barely read it, but it does say right there, throttle. Push in, pull out. If you push all the way in, that's full throttle. Pull all the way out, it's closed. This is a mixture. If you push it in, it's rich. If you pull it out, it's lean. So that pretty much wraps it up. That's a gravity-fed fuel system on a carbureted 180. I've actually got the owner's manual right here that's got the schematic of the fuel system that really helps you understand, what you're looking at. I'll show you that too. So this is a fuel system schematic straight out of the owner's manual. As you see, like I said, each tank has a vent, has vented caps, goes to the fuel selector valve, down to the strainer. The strainer then goes to either the primer or the carb. The carb is controlled by the throttle and the mixture, but the carb goes straight to the engine, primer goes straight to the engine. Main thing is the carb. Hopefully my video helped you understand how the fuel system works. There's plenty of more complicated ones out there, but that's about as basic as it gets in a gravity-fed carbureted 180. So hopefully that helped you understand, and you'll have safe flights in the future.